I'd like to call to order the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners regular session meeting, 19th, 2022. So yet again, it's lovely when we get to look out and see lots of people here taking active interest in the work of the county. So thank you guys for being here tonight. To start, I would like to ask Commissioner Hassel if she would lead us in our invocation, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for the opportunity we have to come before you and bring all thoughts and matters and every part of our life to you, Father, as you are interested in everything that we are, Lord. We ask that you give us wisdom as we go through our work agenda today, Father, that we might honor you in making good decisions to benefit our county and our citizens, Lord. And thank you for the opportunity we have to represent our county. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And if you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Seated, thank you. Now, if you did not get a copy of our agenda, it is outside the doorway if you'd like one, so just FYI. Or if you'd like to look at it later, it is also on the website. So if you go to Montgomery County website, it's under County Commissioners, and you can pull up today's date and see the agenda, as well as every document that we look at tonight is loaded on that site, so you have the ability to have access to that. So to get us started, we do need to approve our agenda, guys. So I need a motion to move forward with our agenda as written.
I make a motion we move forward and accept the agenda as written.
All right, Commissioner Hassel, and I need a second.
A second.
All right, so Commissioner Robinson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So our agenda is set for this evening. So the first topic on the agenda is consent agenda, so items that just normal everyday running of the business. And I think our manager, so Mr. Manus, if you're going to walk us through and at least speak to those. I know we've had an opportunity to look at it. Rosa, if you have any questions of any of them since you weren't with us Thursday night, please feel free to ask. But
okay. Those items on the consent agenda for this evening are the approval of the minutes for the special meeting on June 16th and then the regular session on June 21st. There's budget amendment number 1, which is for the low-income household water assistance program, and then budget amendment number 2, which is for the crisis intervention program funds. There's an authorization for the county manager and finance director to enter into a contract with AVCON for engineering, consulting, planning, and design services for the Montgomery County Airport for a term not to exceed 5 years. There's a resolution authorizing the county manager to convey a Kohler Power Systems generator to the town of Star. Approval of Commissioner Little as the voting delegate for the NCACC Annual Conference and the NCACC Legislative Goals Conference. Approval of tax abatements, tax settlement, and the charge to the tax collector. Just the annual review of the inmate medical health plan for the Sheriff's Office and Detention Center. Appointment of Brandon Haddock to the Airport Advisory Committee for a term to expire in 2025. The appointment of George Vann to the Library Board of Trustees for a term to expire in June of 25. Appointment of Brian Reynolds to the TDA for a term to expire in July of 24, and the reappointment of Chris Cagle, Windozer, John Shaw to the TDA for terms to expire in June of 24. And there's the Register of Deeds report.
thank you, Frankie. Any questions, guys? Any conversation? If not, I do need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Shaw with a motion, and then a second.
A second.
All right, Commissioner Hassel with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so consent agenda moves. Public forum is next. So I do have one, I don't have a name, I have an organization that has signed up on our public forum. So I will get Mr. Manus to share our guidelines for public forum. And then if there's anyone else that did not sign up that would like to speak after the first one does, then you're more than welcome.
Okay. The public comment period is for the purpose of allowing members of the public to comment on county business or items on the Board of Commissioners agenda. This period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the Board of Commissioners. Remarks shall be addressed directly to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. The chairman shall open the public comment period, and any person who wishes to speak shall approach the podium and announce his or her name and physical address prior to making comment. Any citizen desiring to comment on a matter of public interest within the authority of the Board of Commissioners to legislate in an open forum shall be allotted 3 minutes. Citizens may yield their time on a specific topic by utilizing no more than 2 citizens' time slots. This will allow up to, but no more than 9 minutes. The county manager shall notify the chairman upon the expiration of the allotted time.
Thank you, Frankie. So I do have on our list, we have the Montgomery Sports Association. So I'm not sure who is speaking for the Montgomery Sports Association, but whoever is, come on up. I will need you to list your full name and your address, please, sir.
Good evening. I'm John Adams, 195 Deer Lane, Star, North Carolina. I want to talk to you real quick about the Montgomery Youth Soccer Association. They, fine young men, have started a program last year down at Highland Community Center, and they have an opportunity to possibly move to the West Montgomery High School facility, pending the sale. I imagine that's later on topic. I've known these young men for quite a few years, from the time they were in middle school, and watched them grow and have jumped into community service by providing a program for these young folks in this county to expand on their athletics. They're not just wanting to do soccer, they're wanting to do baseball, football, basketball even. And Highland, as great a place as Highland is, it's just too small for what we need for them. And so that's what we're here for, just to kind of put that out there and let you guys know that that's the motivating factor for this program. They're all Montgomery County born and bred, and they very outgoing young men. I'm part of that program. I help ref and help them train their refs, and they have been part of the soccer program in this county for, my youngest is 20, for 15, 16 years, when it was with the Thompsons there in Mount Gilead as well. So, and I know most of you here, especially Kay, so I just thank you for your time, and y'all have a good evening.
Thank you, John. I would like, if people that are out there that are part of this program, raise your hand so we can see the faces he's talking about. There's a lot of people here in support. So thank y'all for all being here this evening. We so appreciate it. Is there anyone else? That's the only name that we had listed to speak tonight. Is there anyone else that would like to speak during public comment time? No? All right. Well, we appreciate all the support that was here for this one topic. That's awesome. We move that out of the way. So we are going to move on into, we have 3 public hearings that we will go through this evening. So for you guys, if this is your first time in here, there's some lengthy things that we're getting ready to work through that has to do with more zoning and planning. It's really fun topics, let me tell you. So, but I am going to turn it over to our county manager to kick us off and kind of start us as we head into this. And then, of course, I know Mike will jump in. So, Frankie, if you will.
All right, so we do have 3 items that require a public hearing, and they're all, as you said, related to land use regulation. The first is actually a rezoning that Mike's going to present to you guys. It should be familiar. It's a repeat of a previous one where there was an error noticed in a plat reference or a lot reference. So to err on the side of caution, we believe that it's better to go through the process again than to leave an error in a reference. So, Mike?
Yeah, and like Mr. Manis was saying, there was a discrepancy in the partial ID number. This was for Jordan 2 LLC. They were wanting the rezoning of 10 acres out of that parcel 658500112449, and this is located on Lilies Bridge Road. The application was for the commercial conditional, meaning that they were wanting mini storage, boat and RV storage. This went through the planning board, and of course, this was in this meeting too for the Board of Commissioners. It was zoned residential 1 currently, and like I said, it was going to commercial conditional. This was approved by the planning board last month for the 5-0. And the properties above it, north is residential 1, south residential 1 also. To the east of it's residential 3, and to the west is residential 1. And it goes along with the future land use plan and everything else, and I would just need a motion to approve the 10 acres for commercial conditional under parcel ID number 658500112449.
So Mike, what was because we approved this however many
Right.
months ago. What was the piece that was wrong that was on here?
So this was not subdivided up. Typically, whenever you're rezoning something, you're gonna subdivide it first and then have it rezoned.
Okay,
But the whole parcel is 200 and some acres, and there's a parcel below it that was owned by the same owner at one time, and now it's currently owned by, I think it's Lake Tillard Fire,
okay,
and that was what got
so we missed.
the parcel ID number under that, and it's
Okay.
directly under it.
Perfect, all right, so that's
In
real.
other words, the map and the parcel ID were inconsistent.
Got it, yes, so that's all we did, was just correct that.
And
All right.
technically, since we erred on the side of caution and went through the whole process, this would be a public hearing process as well.
Yes, yep. So that will lead us to opening up, unless there's any other staff report that you have, Mike, any additional information. If not, we'll bring it to a public comment period if there's anyone that would like to speak on this particular rezoning. Roland, yes? And if you will say your name and your address, Roland, please.
Okay.
Mr. Conley, rather.
I'm Roland Connolly. I live at 119 Dogwood Lane in Mount Gilead.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'm on the planning board, and we had approved this.
Yes.
I just had a question
Yes.
about this, since it's being done tonight, and we've also got the text amendment for the overlay
Mm-hmm.
on the same place. Well, and that's coming up next week. So I'm just wondering if that's, the timing of this is my question. You know, we're working on a text amendment, and you guys are going to approve one for talk about one for 24-27. And we've got one at the planning board next week talking about Lilies Bridge Road.
Yes.
And what I don't want to happen is for a development to come in and not meet the rules that we're trying to right now put in place for that area.
Right.
And so that was my question, and I don't know if there's anything we can do about that or not. Other than the fact that the people who own this property have said they are going to try to abide by it. So, you know, we can trust them to do that, I guess. So
Right.
that's my comment.
Yeah, that is not something
Any
that's before
thoughts?
us tonight.
You know, the first thing that comes to mind is anytime you have some plan development and then an ordinance comes along is the ex post facto restriction, and you can't enforce a new law on something that has
Oh, I
already
know. I
started.
was just, well, since
So,
we started over tonight, that's why I was thinking about that.
That would be a concern
Yeah.
that should a new law, whether it be an overlay or whatever, have greater restriction on a project that had already received conditional
Right.
approval. I defer it to our attorney, but my guess would be that there might be some complications in trying to enforce the new one.
And I'm not really worried about it because the owners have expressed that what their plans were actually meet what our goals are. So hopefully that'll work out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Anyone else for a public comment period? Then I do believe I need a motion to close public comment.
I make a motion, we close public comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Hassel, I need a second.
Second?
Second out of Commissioner Little, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so public comment period is closed. Is there any conversation between you guys? We've approved this in the past, you know what the changes are. So if we are good with that, we will need a motion to approve it, and then there is also a motion with an action of a consistency statement, so.
I move to approve the ordinance amending the official Montgomery County zoning map for the rezoning of 10 acres of property on Lily's Bridge Road, being part of partial 65850011-2449 from residential 1 to commercial conditional as requested by Jordan 2 LLC in RZ 01 2022. This action is consistent with the Montgomery County Land Use Plan.
So Commissioner Robinson has made a motion and a motion for the consistency statement. I do need a second.
Second.
Second for Ms. Little. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that is approved. Thank you, Mike, for that one.
Yes, ma'am.
Done for the second time. All right, next, Frankie, if you will kick us off.
So the next one is gonna be the text amendment, for open space, regarding open space in Montgomery County. This is typically targeted, I'm just not gonna go directly down the list, but we're gonna talk about it and voice our concerns on this. The open space requirements, the idea behind it is to provide more basically recreational open space and land that is not fit, say for instance like a gully or a cutout, just to be considered open space. We're wanting to have more recreational, passive and active open space, and for planned unit development. Say for instance, Lake Tillery, Tillery tradition, the idea behind that was to provide more open space for future development in Montgomery County. And I have examples of public open space and private open space of what they look like. The specific request was that the land must be easily walkable and of such grade and coverage that children can safely play in the area. The smallest non-contiguous portion of the prescribed amount of open space cannot be less than 40% of the total required open space. And the majority of the open space must be as near to the geometric center of the subdivision as possible. And the last, the required area percentage shall be calculated based on only the total of the actual building lot areas in any subdivision. I specifically went for the open space definition in our ordinances, and I provided 2 definitions of that. And I'm just gonna read those. This is option 1, any area of development that allows for light, air, wildlife, habitat, and scenic and recreational use. Also included are the areas designed to enhance the privacy or general appearance of the development. Private open space is open space that is owned by a corporation, individual or property owners association, and public open space is open space owned by a government jurisdiction. I know that's a lot, but it describes in more detail from what our ordinances say for open space. And the last option is open space means any parcel of or area of land fundamentally unimproved and set aside, designed, devoted, or reserved for the public use for common use of owners and occupants of land adjoining or neighboring such open space, or for purposes intended to preserve important natural features of the site. And I made some changes, potential changes to the section 6.3 on requirements for open space. And the intent behind it, like I said, was to provide more open space for planned unit development neighborhoods. And I just wanted to make sure that we get that right and that it's targeted towards planned unit development versus subdividing land. And that's pretty much what I have all on that information.
I know we have to have a public forum, but I believe we have questions, right? Are there things, because there was a lot packed in this. So, Mike, you'll have to bear with us as we kind of talk through this.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
so this ordinance is to be part of our subdivision regulations, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is constituted by subdivision?
Subdividing land.
And who can subdivide land? Can that be, that's residential, but can also be commercial listed as subdivision?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, so residential, commercial, anybody can subdivide land as long as it meets the subdivision regulations in Chapter 160D and also the Montgomery County ordinances.
So would this impact all of those subdivision pieces? I know that it's for residential housing, but the way it's written, would this have any impact to that at all?
Yes, ma'am. It could have the potential to impact it. I specifically tried to target planned unit development and mixed unit development for the purpose of this, but it could have the potential to affect all subdivision regulations.
Do we have ability to work around that if we worked on it additionally? Just
Yes.
try,
Yes,
potentially?
ma'am. I think that it's complex, working with this, because it's such a broad topic and it could affect subdivision in a variety of different ways. We just gotta be really careful on that, to not provide unintended consequences. I think that there is possibly a way to do that. I've done a lot of research, from other counties. I've talked to planners and all, but there is that side of the potential to impact something that's not intended to be impacted.
Because I know we're looking at really wanting to impact residential, but yet I don't know exactly, because you know there's lots of numbers besides stuff in here, but when I read it, there were exceptions. And those exceptions were single-family dwelling, duplex.
Duplexes.
But those are residential, so my brain's trying to wrap around, well then who does it apply to if you're looking at residential subdivision, but yet single-family dwelling and duplexes are an exception? So who would then what would be part of a subdivision that's not single-family dwelling and?
Right. I think the intent behind it, what I listed for the, all major subdivisions with more than 4 residential units shall be required to dedicate, open space. I tried to target it that way.
But if we are exempting single-family homes, which are part of a subdivision, right? So
Yes, ma'am.
is that, so then it wouldn't apply to a 4?
It
It kind of contradicts itself, right? So
Well,
I'm trying to understand.
And
what-
Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just say a hypothetical that I'm a current property owner with one house on 10 acres and I wanted to subdivide that. As long as I don't go past that 4, this doesn't apply. But the spirit of this is that we are attempting to, with new residential development that we hope and are seeing come to this county, that we put out the precedents that we want open space, we want recreational area. We're not necessarily, we want development, but we don't necessarily want houses stacked right on top of each other with no open spaces and no recreational access for the community.
I get the intent. It's how do you have it in the wording so it does not contradict itself, so
Right.
that when someone comes to stand before us with that, there's things we can hold them accountable to. Right now, it just speaks, the wording of it speaks against itself.
It's just murky.
And you spoke to unintentional consequences. What would you think some of those could potentially be when you said that? I'm not smart, I don't know enough about it for me to go, what does that mean?
No, you're fine. The intention, subdivision is such a broad topic and such a broad thing in our ordinances that could cause unintended consequences as far as, like, say for instance, the best example, I was researching and a farmer has 100 acres of land and he has 10 kids. He's wanting to subdivide it. And then, once you go over the threshold, subdivide it to your kids, then are you gonna be required to have open space, recreational open space?
Right.
And that's what I tried to avoid, but there's certain parts that do contradict itself.
Well, I guess in that aspect, are you subdividing and transferring ownership of property? Because I feel like if you
Yeah.
went through the concept of subdividing that between 10 people and transferring ownership, now that excludes this process. If it was held in a trust and subdivided 10 ways and held by one owner, then it would apply from my perspective, I guess.
Right, yeah.
So I guess that's a question of,
Yeah.
you know, if a farmer wanted to hold it in trust and otherwise still subdivide it 10 ways, then it would apply. But otherwise, if it was a question of we're breaking this 100-acre farm apart and giving 20 acres, 20 acres, 20 acres, whatever it
Right.
might be, then now we're talking about that new individual owner having that property and it wouldn't apply.
Right. Yeah, so the trust, they could do that, but otherwise, I think that the regulations would still apply to that in a certain extent, and I'm sure that the family members would possibly sell it off, and it could potentially become a subdivision one day. But that would be, it does contradict itself, and it's a little bit murky.
So on the planning board, when you guys worked through this as a planning board, was it unanimous approval? Or was there discussion, you know, within the planning board? I didn't see that. I didn't pay attention in the staff report to,
Yeah, yes, ma'am, there was discussion, and we actually continued it
okay?
to gather more information. And there was a lot of discussion and a lot of thinking through it and talking through it, and
But was it unanimous when it came here? Did they-
yes, ma'am, yeah, there was no opposed.
Other questions? I know those are my only things in reading through it. It just, there's contradictory pieces that just, to put this in and make it official tonight, there's some things that I am, you know, concerned that will cause us issue, you know, down the road, or our citizens more, right? Not us, but the citizens, and we want to make sure that, and I know our current land use plan speaks about open spaces, correct? So I know very generally.
And currently, we're at, correct me if I'm wrong again here, currently, we're at 20 and 30% as far as, and we're increasing to 30 and 40% as far as open space. So it's not as if we don't already have something in place that speaks to open space.
Yeah, it's just
This is an
general.
increase of we want 30 to 40%, 30%, is it 30% on private and 40% on public?
Yes, sir.
So that's the increase. So we do technically already have open space requirements of 20% for private and 30% for public, and we're asking to go to 30% and 40%.
Well, and with some very specific regulation and exemption.
Walkable.
Yes,
You can't utilize, again, gullies or otherwise unusable space to satisfy that open space requirement. But you would be able to now.
Yeah, you
Oh,
can.
you're correct.
So our proposal was to require it to be usable space and not gullies and all of that. So,
That would be part of the intent, would be to make sure the open space just isn't land holding the earth together. It's actually usable. Now, there is a place for preserving those gullies. You know, they could have sensitive flora or fauna or something that you want to protect. Could be floodplains,
Mhm.
you know, that you want to protect and steer development away from. But part of the intent would be to make those areas more usable.
So before we have any more discussion, I do want to open it up to public comment. Is that okay if we
Yes.
move to that? If there's anybody out there that would like to speak on this topic, come forward. I think Mr. Pope is coming. Jeffrey, if you will.
Jeffrey, 1199 Highway 24 East Visco.
Okay, thank you,
And I'm
sir.
shooting from the hip, y'all. I don't have any notes, so bear with me.
Well, you only got 3 minutes, so.
Well, maybe somebody will give me some extra. And go in a process right now building a house, okay? And as we speak about, and I hate turning my back.
Well, you have to
people.
address us, so it's
Okay,
fine.
that's fine.
You get to turn your back
But,
on it. It's all right.
So doing this, I'm building a house, okay? I knew it was gonna be tough, but as we face inspections, as we face these departments, we talk about, in this room, you guys talk about permitting, you talk about zoning, you talk about terms, okay? And I'm going to talk about reality. This is my land, okay? If I want to stack houses up on my land, I should be able to stack houses up on my land. It feels uncomfortable to me, and I feel my blood pressure going up right now as we talk about my land, okay? And when you go into these meetings, it sounds also lovely and so thick, and I know y'all process this stuff. It's a lot to read. Hooked on Phonics didn't work for me. I'm glad I didn't have to read it, okay? But I'm having to deal with it, okay? So when you get in it, it's like chewing gum. You can't get out of it, all right? And I beg you guys to really bathe this in prayer, because I want to say it again. It's my land, okay? Open space don't mean nothing to me. It's my space, and we need to remember that. You know, I'm not trying to create a pollution plant. You know, I just want to build a house. But there's so many things right now. You go this far and you come back and you back up. Some of the stuff we've already got is not functional. So I'm learning this. It's a process for me. So I just ask y'all, as we go through these things, think about it more in a reality instead of terms and you know, documents, you know, and that's where I'm at, and I'm gonna stop there. So before I overdo myself.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Conley.
I'm Roland Conley, 119 Dogwood Lane, Mount Gilead. The reason that we on the planning board were adamant about modifying the open space requirements that we currently have is that developers, and not somebody trying to build one house on their own property, have taken advantage of our county rules that we currently have and have made gutters and drain pipes and things of that nature the open space that they have in developments that we have currently being built in Montgomery County right now. So what that is doing is depriving those owners, and not the guy who owned the property to start with, because he sells all those pieces to somebody else, so it's not his land anymore. It deprives them of the opportunity to have a place for their children to play. If we want to develop a county that's inviting to have people come and live in our county and recreate, and we're a rural county, we're not a city county, so we think that it's important, extremely important, that these rules be put in place as soon as possible, because there's huge numbers of developments getting ready to be developed. And if we don't get these rules in place soon, then we're going to be stuck with another 1,000 homes being built without any recreational space for the kids or anybody else to play. So that's the reason why we're doing this. We're not trying to take people's rights away from them. We're trying to keep our county from not being a Detroit City where you have everything stacked on top of each other and there's no room for anybody to have any outdoor enjoyment. And Montgomery County is a rural county. And so that is what we're trying to preserve here.
Absolutely. I think we understand the intent.
Okay, well, that's the intent, and I just think
It's
that
making sure how it's worded.
making sure how it's worded is
It's-
correct, and I think
We can be,
that's
we can adhere to that, not currently, I think there's some things that contradict each other that would cause it to be hard to enforce.
I understand that, and
So-
we struggled with some of this wording,
Yeah.
and part of it had to do with the subdividing of a farmer, his own property, et cetera, but I think we tried to come up and say the word of recreational space and what we're talking about in the residential development subdivisions is what we were targeting. And it got, I guess, construed to cover too much.
Yes.
Okay.
I
So that's where we
agree
stand.
with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Steve Hare.
Yes.
996 Mount Carmel Church Road.
Good evening, Mr.
Good
Hager.
evening. Everything they're talking about sounds just fine to me, but when I look at the board and when they're bringing all this up, you all look confused. I think you need to table it just a little bit and get a better grip on it so the wording will stick. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know if it's confusion, I think we know it.
It's
We-
concern.
It's
Yeah.
concern,
Yeah.
yes. We have
Concern.
concern, not confusion.
Not confusion.
Concern.
We want to make sure they do there's stuff in here that is, we need to iron out.
Yes. So-
Anybody else? All right, I do need a motion to close our public comment time.
Make a motion to close the public comment.
Commissioner Shaw and
Second.
Commissioner Little with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and any opposed? No. So any other discussion that we have, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Manus. I think there's some things we have to understand even tonight where, what directions are possible for us, knowing the understanding of the work that has been done by the planning board, and obviously we see that too with the growth that is coming to, especially the western part of the county. I
Yes.
mean, there are some things that we need, we need to slow down and really think diligently about so that it does fit our land use intent. And now how do we have some things in place that can help ensure, but not impact, again, have some unintentional consequences that could impact people that we don't want it, that we don't want it impacting. So, Mr. Manus, I think you have some input for us or some to help us understand the directions we can possibly go.
Sure. Of course, the board has a few different options. One, you could approve it as is. Two, you could deny it as is. There can be changes to it before there's any move one way or another. What is not unheard of at all in legislation, both on local, state, and national levels, is to send something back to committee, or in this case would be our planning board, for further study and recommendation. The ordinance is well intended, it's supported by your advisors in the planning board, it's supported by the master land use plan. There has been good work put into it yet to investigate to get us to this point, and we are into the approval process. I would not recommend starting over. My recommendation would be to send it back to the planning board for further study and recommendation, and therefore the board continue the public hearing until a later date. So we basically suspend the process, we don't start over, send it back for further recommendation. That's my recommended option.
Any discussion that you guys have that you would like to kick around things? Or there are our three options. If no discussion, then you're welcome if there's a motion with one of those you would like to put before the board.
I've had multiple citizens contact me about the growth in the western part of the county and making sure that it is done in a way that benefits the area and keeps the beauty of the area. And so I think it's really important to look at the open space and how we want that done, and to be very specific, so that we're not going back and forth about what qualifies and what doesn't, because it needs to be able for not only us to understand it all, but citizens, before they get in the middle of something and have to stop, like Mr. Pope, trying to figure things out. So if we could be more specific, I think that would help with the clarity of this. So I think we should consider sending it back and let them work on it some more and bring it back, so that we can better preserve our rural county that way, because there's a lot of growth going on in other rural counties. If you just take a road trip and it's houses right on top of each other, and it loses the beauty of the area that they're in. And of course, the commercial side of things as well. It's very important for our growth and development.
I can see where this aligns with possibly the opinion of the people that are developing on the west side of the county and that live on the west side of the county, but it impacts the entire county.
Yes.
So I think that's something to consider, because there is such a difference between the Lakes region on our western border and the east side of our county and the agricultural region. I feel like with a little more due diligence, we might be able to separate that out to where somebody like Mr. Pope would be able to move forward with doing something that's beneficial for his family, but does not impose on, the essence or natural beauty here in Montgomery County. But we do deter tract home style neighborhoods from being built in our UR National Forest region.
That's a point well said. It is an ordinance of general application, and to an earlier question, it is in the subdivision section, which isn't a particular zone.
Right.
It's
Broad, yes.
throughout the whole jurisdiction. So any ordinance of general application, well, that's why it's complicated.
Yes,
It's general
yes.
application.
And I know lots of work has gone into it, and there's lots of good things here. It's just kind of digging through it a little more in depth. Any other conversation?
No, I pretty much agree with Mr. Pope when I read it. Thinking as a single person, single home, it did read kind of restrictive, but then at the same time, I also saw this as a way of controlling these massive
Mm-hmm.
projects
Right.
where they just throw up a bunch of homes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but it does need some work.
And I know this has been a topic of conversation in this county for a number of years, but now it's upon us, right? Because the
Right.
Yes,
growth
it
is
is.
here.
Yes.
In the past years, you know, it's been speculated, so.
As soon as they finish clearing out the rest of 24, 27, those developers are ready to jump on it. So,
So-
yes.
So to Mr. Conley's statement, we obviously will need to, you know, work diligently and land this plane sooner or later so that we can have some things in place that really fit. But, so if we are wanting to send this back to the planning board and continue this, the public hearing session, we need a motion that states that.
I make a motion, we send this back to the planning board for more clarity so that it can come back for hearing at a later date.
Okay. So Commissioner Hassel with a motion. Anybody with a second?
Second, please.
Commissioner Little, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so, Mike and Mr. Manager, so this we will send back to the planning board and just, you know the challenges, I think you're aware of them yourself, so the
Yes.
things to work through. Perfect. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda.
What we got next is overlay zoning. So this is another text amendment, and this request will consider amendments to Article 1, Section 3 related to the implementation of overlay zoning in the Montgomery County zoning ordinance. So this specifically would target the 2427, Highway 2427 through Troy to Bisco, and then it would extend all the way down from Troy all the way down to the Stanley County line. This would be an aesthetic overlay zoning, so the specifics of it would be more landscaping and more buffering in order to improve the aesthetics for commercial and industrial zoning. And I have a specific list as far as the application of it and the front setbacks in your application packets and the rear setbacks and what it applies to. Say for instance, residential is exempt from it, and so are duplexes. But this is specifically pretty much, there's areas on 2427 that really need the buffering and screening, and I have some picture examples up there on the PowerPoint presentation. I know for DH Griffin, that's for the going up towards Bisco, and then certain areas even as small as the trash containment, it could use some buffering, and then different areas on down through Troy. And then I've got examples of these bufferings, so you can tell from the previous pictures on the PowerPoint slide, and then comparing them to this right here with the buffering of the trash containment and the landscaping. And like I said, this is just basically to enhance the aesthetics of the county. And so this, like I said, will be a modification to the Article 1, Section 3. We have, as far as overlay zoning, we currently have watershed overlays, but we do not have overlays for screening and aesthetic requirements. So I'll turn it over to the board for any conversation or any concerns, questions that they may have on that.
I personally agree with the overlay. I feel as though the western portion of the county being the Ori National Forest and a push for increasing tourism in our county, that we do need to protect that major thoroughfare of 24/27 from industrial or commercial growth that doesn't have some type of aesthetic appreciation at the highway.
Questions, comments?
So is this overlay just for the county, or is it going to include the townships along 24/27? Does it show a break?
Yeah, it would not include the townships. I have in the agenda packet, I outlined the 24/27, the areas that it would cover. So it would not be in the township jurisdiction for that. It would be specifically for the county.
Is there a map, Mike, because we don't have one in our packet that would attach to this, that would show those areas, right? So we would,
Yeah.
I know in other things that I have seen before with overlay pieces, there would be a map approved with it, with the ordinance that would speak to that, right? That would show where these areas would fall in line. So again, there is absolutely no question when someone
Right.
is
So we would need a map. I guess it's basically once it, if and when it were approved, then we would amend that on the map. So I do not have that currently. I've got a print off of what I was proposing for this aesthetic and overlay screening, but I don't have the specific map for it.
So then later we would have to come back and amend it to include the map?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that's what it would look like? So if that is a need, could that be part of it for us to do all at one time? So
Yes.
that we have the map that shows, so then we don't have an ordinance in place that is not supported by map should someone, my question, I would just think, me, if I were somebody who's digging into this and needing, to know if I'm doing something on 24/27, I would know where my boundaries fall within.
Right.
Because I know that's text-wise, that's difficult to read in text, because it's from Troy to, or Bisco, all the way to the river, basically, right? Or Carthage, I think it even say, Carthage into Bisco, and Bisco to Troy, and then Troy on into, that would be my question. Any other comment, question that we have? And then I will open it up unless,
It does not impact existing businesses. Is that correct?
It does not,
right,
sir.
it would just keep us from having some of the situations we have. So I do, Frankie, yes, open it to public forum at this point. So we will open it to public comment. If anyone is there that would like to speak on this topic. No? Up?
Well, just a point of clarification, if I may. Concerning the map, it says from Troy to the lake. There's a city limit sign in Troy, and there's a lake. I don't know what the map is gonna do if you can't read that,
No, I understand. I think just usually, most of it does come with ordinances like this have a map attached
Yeah,
a lot of the
it's
time.
just- It's window dressing.
Yeah, well, just any conversation you guys have. So I think we're in, again, any more public comment? So we'll need a motion to close public comment.
Make a motion, we close.
Commissioner Hassel, a second.
A second.
Commissioner Shaw, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we're good to close public comment. Discussion amongst us, or we can kick it back over to, I think this applies to the same three things that you said to us earlier. So we can, let me flip my page over where I wrote notes. We can approve it as is, we can deny it and be done with it, or we have the ability same situation, to send it back if there's anything, if there's change that needs to happen, or we have the ability to approve it as it sits today, or deny it if we believe this isn't a need within the county or would be beneficial to the county. So I'm gonna let you guys,
Let's send it back.
I didn't hear you.
I was saying, send it back, definitely.
Well, that would
attach a
have to be
map
something that
showing
you would
everything.
make a motion
Oh.
to do that, and
What I
then,
was saying.
unless you have conversation otherwise.
I mean, I can understand the point regarding the map. If it is a broad term, I understand what you're saying as far as pretty obvious, Troy to the lake. Along that route, what property owners are we impacting? You know, is there, I know that there's national forest, I know there's county property, there's other things to consider. So we are isolating a pretty specific group of people that own property in those specific sections. A map might help us understand which property owners, which properties we are specifically saying are going to be impacted by this.
Can I, Madam Chair, can I
Yes,
add a
please.
little bit of context? What's proposed now, we have a little bit of a chicken or egg dilemma. When you're adopting an overlay district, you determine two things: what the restrictions are and who it applies to.
Right,
Right.
So we've got the restrictions.
right,
So who does it apply to?
correct, yeah.
And this, the who it applies to is actually not a text amendment.
Right.
It's a rezoning. You're applying a new zone on a particular piece of property. So often you will see a overlay zoning process. You have two things going on concurrently. You have a map amendment, which is rezoning, and you have text. And like I said, often they are bundled together. You could adopt the ordinance as it is, but strict application would be hard because someone would say, where am I subject to this and when was my property rezoned?
Right, right.
And they would have a point. Typically, you would say, hey, this is going to affect properties adjacent to 2427 or within 200 feet or 400 feet or whatever that threshold may be, and that would be shown on the map so someone from the general public could go to the official zoning map and see their property and say, oh, I am subject to those
Right.
regulations.
Right.
So if you adopt the ordinances first, those that could potentially be affected haven't had the opportunity to see what those rules are. You would then go and apply the who is affected later. That's why it's often completed concurrently.
Right. Okay, thank you for that additional context.
I think the map's gonna be important just because it spells everything out. It doesn't leave anything cloudy or for speculation and decisions to come back to later.
Well, I think the who, right, so it's,
It gives more time for those specific property owners to realize what is occurring.
What is about to happen, yeah.
Because again, I do support the concept of
Yes.
making sure that industrial and commercial development along 2427 has some type of aesthetic
Yes.
pleasing
which is our
road
scenic
frontage.
byway, right?
It
It is
is.
a scenic
Yes.
byway.
All right, so if there's no further conversation, we do need a motion. If, Ms. Little, if that is a motion you would like to make, if you could state that.
I move that TA 022-2022 be sent back to the planning board for more clarification and addition, attachment of a map of the proposed area.
Thank you, and we will continue the public hearing.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
there is our motion out of Rosa Little. Ms. Little, Commissioner Little, I need a second.
I second.
Out of Commissioner Robinson, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so Planning Board, thank you for the work. I think we're right there on top of it. Just a few little things that, clarity that we can make sure that it is definitely something that is workable for the county and that is easy for citizens to move forward with and understand. But I know lots of work went into it, and we appreciate it. So I'm sure we'll probably see you back on our docket in 1 month, I bet. Okay, next on our agenda, after all of those loveliness, we're moving on to the county manager's report. So, Mr. Manis, the spotlight's back on you again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item on your agenda under the county manager's report is actually a report from the sheriff's office related to courthouse security and safety. I'll not steal the sheriff's thunder if he wants to go into it a great deal further, but in summary, there's greater concern both locally and nationally about security of courthouses, schools, and governmental buildings. And the sheriff has addressed some immediate concerns, has some additional recommendations, and perhaps some updates that he's prepared in a report that's in your agenda packet, and would seek concurrence to some of the recommendations and maybe some effort to move forward. Sheriff, I'll let you go a little deeper in that.
Good evening.
Good evening, Sheriff. How are you?
I'm well. How are y'all?
We're great.
Kind of want to give you a little bit of a history lesson to let you know what has transpired over the years and why we're at tonight. As you know, the courthouse was built in, I believe, 1921, so it's over 100 years old. So it is an old building, and it was built when access and security was not an issue. Public buildings were built back then to be public. They wanted everybody to come in. But as you know, throughout our world, there are dangers as it pertains to governmental buildings, whether it be a school or hospital, or police department, city hall, county courthouse. They are opportunities of places that become under attack. We're trying to be kind of proactive here. There's not any event that has occurred. We're just trying to take some simple measures to increase security to make our courthouse a little safer. But as I said, courthouse is 100 years old. Until about 24 years ago, the courthouse was staffed by many departments. 911, sheriff's office, okay, you can remember we were there, the magistrate's office was there, the jail was upstairs. It was a very busy building 24 years ago. In 1998, kind of the first movement was that the emergency 911 was relocated to its current location on Liberty Street. And that kind of took out a very big component because the dispatchers that worked at the courthouse also manned the doors at night and was able to look through a camera and buzz people in and out that needed to be in and out. They either go to the jail or the sheriff's office or the magistrate's office. But when those dispatchers moved over there, that took away that receptionist per se. And the answer to that 24 years ago was to hand out some key fobs. They took the six doors go in and out of the building, and it is a standard door, but it had a key fob device that a magnetic, this is 24-year-old technology, a key fob device that looked like a magnet would be synchronized with a locking device. And once those two were kind of synchronized like a Bluetooth device in our modern time, you could take that, touch it to the door, and it would unlock the door. No smart technology. It didn't tell you who used it, didn't tell you what time they came in, didn't tell you how long they were in the building. It was just a device to get in. Now, the reason they gave out those key fobs is, again, 911 had left, but the magistrate's office and the jail was still in the building. And so people had to get in, officers had to get into the magistrate's office to process an arrest. People had to get into the jail to book in an inmate. Employees had to get into those areas, sheriff's office employees, and of course the governmental employees. So the best of my recollection, it was over 100 key fobs were having to be given out because city police officers had to have a way to get in to arrest someone and book them in. And so 24 years ago, there were 100 plus key fobs that were dispersed. In 1999, the sheriff's office moved to its current location, which is on Main Street, And 13 years ago, most recently, in 2009, the detention center and the magistrate's office was relocated to the new detention center. That left the courthouse unoccupied during non-business hours. So, 13 years ago was the first time in the history of Montgomery County that building didn't have somebody in it 24/7. The jail left, the magistrates left, and the building's basically locked up at night. Most recently, in June of this year, an administrative order was issued by a judge saying, can we look at courthouse security? What can we do? I conducted a study in July, and that study is just a layman study. And what I did was to look at the area, look at the courthouse, look at some common concerns, speak to some stakeholders, talk to the School of Government, look at some measures that we could employ now, look at some additional measures that we may want to deploy, and also look at are there any experts out there that can give us best guidance in this. And so what I came up with is the special report that's in your agenda packet. And again, I'm no expert in building security, but just in layman's terms, what I did was take a look at the courthouse. And one of the things that I noticed is, again, it has 6 entrances. Those were locked, but again, they were locked with key fobs, and those key fobs, 150 plus.
Who knows?
Who knows where they're at. And so one of the immediate easy fixes was to disable the key fob system, because that door had an old conventional locking cylinder. So we met with county maintenance and said, why can't we reproduce a key for this locking cylinder, discontinue these key fobs, and then we take this master key and we make about less than 2 dozen, and we give a hard key, an old-fashioned key, to everybody that works at the clerk's office, everybody that works at the DA's office. Nobody else needs to be in the building after hours. And so we did that. We said, yeah, it's simple. We will come up with about 1.5 dozen keys. That way everybody that has a desk and a job duty in the building will have a key to get in on after hours. We'll be able to get in on early if they came in on flex schedule. We'll be able to come back to the office if they forgot something. And of course, be able to interview witnesses and prepare cases for trial. So we gave them access to the building, but we did that very limitedly. Maintenance, of course, got a key. Housekeeping got a key to care for the building. But Sheriff's Office doesn't have any keys. County Commissioner doesn't have it. We want those number of keys and the number of people to be limited. So we were able to really cheaply cut down on the access to the building. So the 6 doors are not always being open. Everybody was encouraged to go around to the front, come in the front door where we're staffed with a magnetometer, a metal detector, and a deputy sheriff that's there during business hours. Anytime the building's open for public, it's got security at the front, it's got magnetometers at the front, and we wanted everybody to go to the front. The people that were excluded from having to go through the magnetometers are the people with common sense applied. We didn't need the deputies to go through. We didn't need the probationer's office to go through. You didn't need the clerks that work there to go through. That's their workspace. So they're able to bypass the line and get on into the work assignment. But everyone else going in, if you're with a plumbing company, you got to go through the magnetometer. If you're a citizen going to court, or someone going to the the clerk of court's office, any reason to be in the courthouse, you should have to go through the metal screener for safety purposes. So that was an easy fix. The other thing we looked at is we are doing, our district attorney is doing an excellent job in moving cases forward much more rapidly than I've witnessed in my 40 years. And we're holding court more often than we've ever held court. We will have jury trial after jury trial, and that's a good thing. We are moving those cases forward. But with that, we only have 2 courtrooms. We have courtroom A, the main courtroom. We have courtroom B down in the basement, used to be the commissioner's room. But I've seen us have 3 courts at one time, and we only have 2 courtrooms. We'll find an empty room in the back that's a makeshift conference room, and that's where the grand jury will meet. So it is a very busy building, and the back door was one of the busiest places of the building. It's the elevator. That's where we take the inmates to and from Superior Court. That is where the handicap has to be allowed in and escorted up to the metal detectors by a bailiff. That's also where courtroom B is at. The door to courtroom B is right there at the back door. Many people, including some of our county employees, would go out the back door, come back in the back door, would let people that are attending family court to go out to use the phone and would let them back in. Well, who knows what they were doing in the parking lot at the car. So we said, hey, let's just shut the back door down. We'll only let people be buzzed in a very limited basis, and that's going to be the judge's staff, the court reporter, and the transportation officer bringing inmates in for Superior Court. So that eliminated that. That was an easy fix. The other things that we looked at was pretty simple things. Just taking a look around the building, we saw some debris items that could be used to prop a door open, whether that be a piece of a brick or a block or something. It's just maybe been there for years. You know, let's clean up all these items that are sitting here and there and get them out of the way so that no one can prop a door open or even to go out and take a smoke break. We educated the county employees, if you go out and take a smoke break, you got to go around to the front and come back in, and that sets an example for the public. And we at the sheriff's office, we don't go into the back door. We go through the front door, and we want to set that example as well. The other thing, some common sense things was, you know, what else can we do? Such as our doors don't have exit alarms. In other words, once you're in the building, Miss Dawson could open the side door or basement door for Miss Hassel and let you in. For nefarious reasons, that's a way to get in. So we talked about, should we put exit alarms where you can exit for a fire or for an emergency? It just sets off an audible alarm. We also talked about that the 4th level of the courthouse, the old jail, is still accessible. Anybody gets on the elevator, gets off on the 4th level at the old jail, and we probably need to discontinue that elevator's ability to go to the 4th floor without some kind of bypass key or using the old fire escape to get up there. It probably does not, does not need to be accessible for the public to get in the building and go up to an area that's just full of debris, not safe to begin with, but is a multitude of hiding places of various reasons for someone that has a nefarious thought. So we can probably work on the elevator issue internally. Obviously, myself and maintenance can work on picking up some debris and getting rid of that. The county manager informed me, he said, look, we have got some money. We were looking at some access control devices. We gave that funds to the county maintenance director and looking at ordering some things, new card key systems and this, that, and the other. And I said, multiple ways to get in may not be the answer. Less ways to get in might be the better answer. I said, but I'm no expert, but I do know who is. And that is that the North Carolina Sheriff's Association has 2 subject matter experts that will visit county buildings, public buildings, and they have been trained to give expert advice on how to make that building more secure the cheapest way that you can. And a lot of it, again, is common sense stuff. We checked today, the manager and I checked today with the Sheriff's Association and found out that that assessment and that advice that they will bring to the table is free. It's without charge. So I have signed up to have us to have an assessment. So I think what we're going to do is get this, that we've done these items. We're going to do a few more things that we can do ourselves. And get an assessment of 2 people that are subject matter experts to come look at our courthouse to give us what they think is the best practice for a building that size, that age, give us the recommendations. Then we might be spending money, not a lot. I don't know that we may spend much at all, but we're at least spending it in a wise way with a roadmap to the future and still have a building that is inviting. You're just coming in, you're going through a metal detector, and you have the ability to get out of the building if there's an emergency, but without having so many points that could be opened and closed. And these are concerns because, again, just last week, ironically, in New Bern, there was a court matter. Two parties were upset at each other in court. They went outside. There was a shooting in the courthouse lawn and a person died.
Yeah.
And so, is it real? Can it happen? Yes. Do we want it here? No. And if there's something we can do today that costs us nothing or costs us little, it will help improve the safety of a building that is the people's building. And they need to get into it, but they need to feel safe when they're in there. And we're asking people to come do their civic duty for jury. We're asking people to come to be a witness in a case. We should provide them as much safety as we can in a 100-year-old building. And so there are some things that we needed to do, we've done. There's a few more things that we're going to do. But I think the assessment will come back to y'all, and the manager then will come and give you the final.
What's next?
What's
right.
next, yeah.
What's next?
Got to put a stake in the ground somewhere. One of the things I want you to realize that the School of Government taught us is that the courthouses are unique. Think of them as a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
The top of the stool, the platform, is the courthouse. One leg is the judges and judicial system and the clerk of court. The other is the county commissioners, and the third is the sheriff. And each one has a responsibility to hold that stool up. And so as it pertains to the physical constructional needs, whether it's a new door or a new security system or putting a roof on or putting in plumbing, that's something that only the county commissioners have control over. It's your money. You will spend it as you see fit. As the security, it's the duty of the sheriff. And as to courtroom decor and order and trial order, that's the duty of the chief judges and the trial judges. And so the three of those work together. And so I wanted to also let you know that it is the responsibility of us to do the security. But I wanted a concurrence that we agree, the county agrees with the sheriff, that these are some good measures, that we want to do those, and we want to do more, and we want to be two strong legs and support what the judicial needs are, and that's just a concern for safety. Are there any questions?
No, I think when we, high level in our work session, we knew that this was a topic and versus it falling in a consent agenda, we wanted you to have an opportunity because I think it's important for people to hear too versus just read it in a packet that the good work that's being done because, citizen safety and security is important. And it's nice to see the work that's been put in, of some needs. Unfortunately, as the world continues to evolve, we'll see other areas that'll have to touch. But thank you for the work that you've done and then also connecting even today. That was in our report about that was going to happen, but now it's been done. And those folks are scheduled to come out. So
They are.
Anything else you guys have, comments or questions for Sheriff?
I'm sure that the manager and I'll come back to you in the future and say, this is the results of the survey.
Spend some dollars.
And this is what we're going to, recommend. But we immediately kind of thought, well, hey, we might be spending our money on something we might not
Right,
want.
that's absolutely
So
right.
let's ask somebody that does this for a living. And as it turns out, the Sheriff's Association has two good people that do that for counties for free. So
Well, we so appreciate you being here tonight and delivering that in person. So great,
Yes.
great information. We
Thank y'all.
appreciate it.
Thank
you. Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Manager,
Okay.
you're still up.
All right. So I have a couple of action items that we're requesting. The first concerns the property at West Montgomery High School. As we all know, that part of the agreement with the schools in exchange for some initial funding for the construction of Montgomery Central High School, the schools agreed to convey the school properties to the county. East Montgomery has a end user, and that property was sold earlier this year. And West Montgomery does not, at this point, have We have not sold it, we still own it.
Yeah.
So since our last meeting, we have an offer for the purchase of the West Montgomery properties, which I believe is 3 distinct parcels that make up the whole. And that offer is $600,000. So the board has, well, you have several options, but if the board wishes to sell a piece of real property, you cannot enter into a private sale with an individual.
Correct, yes.
There are some minor exceptions to the disposal of real property, but that's not the case here. So a competitive process is required. You have 3 choices. You have sealed bid, public auction, or a negotiated offer / upset bid process. We went through a process, the upset bid process, with the Halterwanger retreat. And it can be an extended process, but it tends to give more exposure and more opportunity for the general public to see it and get their financing lined up. It has advantages, I believe. So with an offer being made on the property, knowing that it has to be a competitive process, you could take the offer and start an upset bid process. And that is what is before you tonight, would be a resolution to start that process. There does not effectuate a sale. It starts a process to give others an opportunity to take that offer if they're interested and upset that offer.
Correct.
When the final offer is in and the process has expired, the matter would come back to the board for a final say as to whether or not to sell it for the highest offer. So, in effect, this starts a process.
So can you remind the board, once the process starts, how long do people, and I know this will be made public in the newspaper, et cetera, published, but how long do people have to send in a bid?
I believe it's a 10-day process each round.
Yes.
But effectively, it turns into a 14-day process because of the notice requirements.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lot depends on the notice. It could turn out to be longer than 10 or 14 days.
Just depends on when you get the
It just
notice
depends
out.
on when we're able to publish notice. There are deposit requirements for anyone wishing to make an offer. And if we do decide to go forward with the with this offer and the process, one other aspect to continue the process would be a deposit would have to be received once once you guys agree to start the process.
Yes.
And that's a 5% deposit.
Correct, yes.
Overall, once this gets started, approximately how long do you think it would take before we get to the point where we could move forward with whoever?
It varies depending on the interest in the property. Most of my experiences throughout my career, it's been fairly quick because there hasn't been a ton of interest. And you only go through 1 round, maybe 2. Take the Halterwanger retreat, for example. We went
did
through 4 or 5 rounds.
4 or 5 rounds.
And so you take those rounds, you add 10 to 14 to 21 days, depending on the publication dates, and it could extend for months.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So we have no way to know unless.
You
until we
don't
see.
know. Now, with an auction or a sealed bid process, you know right then what the highest one is, and it's done.
Yeah.
And then you come back. But again, with those 2 processes, if it's a rainy day and we're auctioning, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of people, or maybe some interested people saying, I'm not venturing out in the rain.
Right.
In a sealed bid process, there's some guesswork. With an upset bid process, you know what you've got to offer to be competitive.
I think that was a really good process we utilized when we
Yes.
did the Halterwanger. I thought.
good.
So that is what's on the table. So obviously, we have the ability to make a motion to start the process, which would begin the process with Ms. Ford's offer. So that's how this works. And then however long it takes to get things published, then we'll have 10 days from that date for someone else to upset that bid. And then if there is no upset bid, then that would come back to us for us to approve if we would accept that, or it continues on the process.
I feel like it's the right path to take. I feel like we need to go ahead and move forward with the process.
So would you like to make that motion?
I move we approve the resolution authorizing the sale and upset bid process for the West Montgomery High School properties.
All right, so Commissioner Shaw with the motion. Anybody to second that?
A second.
Commissioner Hassel with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so here we go, Ms. Ford. We are moving forward, so,
I want to say one thing.
yes. Can we do that, Frankie?
Is that okay?
If you want to.
Yeah. Sure, come on up. We'll
I
let
want to
you.
just give a brief justification for the price, because I know everybody in the community is going to be like, oh my God, 600,000. But we're looking at $1 million in asbestos removal, and the county isn't going to, nobody's going to pay for that. That's on us.
Yeah.
And the reason why I did do 600,000 is because of the lumber, and that's what everyone is going to say. All those trees out there, but all of those trees will never be cut down. So that automatic money isn't going to happen like that. So I have to get grants, I have to get loans, and I have to use me and my husband's money to make this happen. We're not rich by any means, but we are willing to work hard. And the other thing that we're willing to do, MSA, they're in conjunction with us, as well as Montgomery Community College. The vice president said that he would call you guys himself, because he is on vacation, and let you know that we are partnering with them as well to make sure that Montgomery County grows and it's better. The CDL Class A school is going to really change the dynamic in Montgomery County, as well as Phase 2 and Phase 3. We are going to have a diesel truck engine repair school there as well in Phase 2. Montgomery Community College has partnered with me as well to start that program up. So even though it's only $600,000, to me that's a whole lot. But that $600,000 is going to bring millions of dollars back into your community, because you're trying to develop your industrial park. If you have CDL drivers ready and available, and they can come to graduation, which will be held in the auditorium, and we are going to allow, me and my husband and I, we're going to allow the community to utilize the facility in every way, shape, and form. We're going to build another road, so the trucks and the individuals that are using the fields and the facility, it's gonna be crush and run. We ain't got no asphalt money. But we're gonna have another parking lot for them so that they can utilize the fields. We're gonna do everything to make sure that everyone understands that West Montgomery is not gonna be demolished, like the $2 million that was, $2 million to demolish West Montgomery. That's not gonna happen. They're still gonna be able to have the old school basketball game. But the roof, just to repair the roof on the school, is almost $1 million. It's $7,000 for me to change the locks without a control key. So if you look at all of the quotes and the pricing, the sub pump that's pumping the water back to Troy, that's another $150,000 that Voc Rehab, because I am a veteran, is willing to pay once the purchase of the school is finalized. So just know that we're not coming in as a private entity to take the school away and not help out the community. I've talked to Mr. Shaw, pretty much everyone up here. We're just trying to make sure that everyone understands. We're not trying to get West for a low price, but it's things that have to happen at West before it's workable and profitable, because the first year I'm not going to make any money. But the second and third year, I know that I will, in conjunction with Montgomery Community College and the community. And we're bringing something here. We're going to have 70 jobs there within the first year. That's a full cafeteria staff, custodial staff, and the instructors and on-the-road drivers. So just know that we're not taking it from you. And we have all the quotes if you guys need to see them. I will give you that along with the check.
Well, down the road, you may have an opportunity to be standing right here again, so.
I hope so.
But we appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Thank you.
But the public get to say anything?
There's not a public forum for that. This is just to open the bid process. That's what that is for. All right. We're
Okay.
done with that. Next, Frankie?
I have I call it good news. action item. Actually, two actions that are requested. The first being the adoption of a resolution accepting American Rescue Plan grant from the state. And this is for the Booster Pump Station number 2 project. That amount is $2.5 million. The approval of this resolution is required by state regulations or state processes so that we can begin the project. The project is one that I requested funding from the General Assembly for last year. It is on our capital improvement plan and asset management plan as a higher priority. The booster pump station supplies, I want to say it's over 80% or 12 of our 14 pressure zones in the county. It's a very critical asset for our water system. It was previously designed a couple years ago. There was an attempt to make Booster Pump Station 1 project that we've just completed, and Booster Pump Station 2 happened all at once or very close together. The pricing for Booster Pump Station 1 was more than anticipated, and the funding was not available, so Booster Pump Station 2 was delayed. So now we have the opportunity to pick it back up with 100% grant funding from the state, assuming prices don't shock us. So I would certainly recommend accepting the funding from the state, and it will allow us to get busy on a very critical piece of infrastructure.
All right, so we just need approve a resolution to accept the grant funding. Someone would like to make that motion? If there's any discussion around it, I know we've talked about all of these needs many times, so.
I move that we approve a resolution to accept the grant funding of $2,500,000 for the booster pump station number 2.
So Commissioner Little with a motion, I need a second.
Second.
Commissioner Hassel, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. Mr. Manus, anything additional?
And on the coattails of that, we always have to account for it in a budget. So I would request that we approve the grant project budget,
Okay.
and which would appropriate the funds. So once we get an okay from the state to go forward with bidding, and we have a budget to support.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the grant project budget ordinance.
I move that we make a motion that we approve the grant project ordinance.
Okay, so Commissioner Shaw with the motion, second. Commissioner Robinson, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the grant project budget ordinance is approved. Mr. Manus, anything else on your reports tonight?
I've talked enough.
You've talked quite a bit tonight, I know. That's good. Well, thank you very much. So I will open it up to the board. Is there anything that you would like to bring forward this evening? Any comments? Anything?
I would like to say Peach Festival and Troy Fest were fantastic. We had a great time at it. And then I did have a comment or a statement I'd like to put out as far as the end of June marks the culmination of a partnership between the county and the Humane Society. Moving forward, the Montgomery County Department of Animal Services has assumed full responsibility for operations of the intake and adoption center. The path leading us to this pivotal moment has been decades in the making. The Montgomery County Humane Society was first established in the 1970s, but found its home in the 1980s when the charter was resurrected by dedicated citizens with an endless compassion for care of animals. Through hard work and sacrifice, the Humane Society filled the void in our county to rescue and adopt lost, abandoned, and surrendered animals. As the need for services grew, it became apparent a new facility was required to expand accommodations and reduce a euthanization rate that was the highest in the state at the time. With the gracious generosity from founding members, patrons, and the county, a new facility opened in 2015. Our current euthanization rate of approximately 4% is testament to the success realized after 40 years of dedication to providing humane care and shelter for these animals. As the county stewards operations moving forward, the Humane Society is turning its focus towards expanding access to low-cost spay and neuter services for the people of Montgomery County. I would like to thank the Humane Society Board, volunteers, and patrons, past and present, for the countless hours of service and dedication. I wish you great success and offer my support in your continued endeavors. And that's all I'd like to say.
Here, thank you very much. Great statement. Anybody else? I do want to put this out there tonight. It's in our agenda packet. You can read it in the Tourism Development Authority notes, but I think so people know, so you can plan it on your calendars. It's a long ways away, but it's really exciting. So this year, the Christmas tree that will be at the Capitol in Washington is coming from the great state of North Carolina. So that tree will travel across the entire state to make its way home in Washington in November. It's tentatively that tree, there will be an event around that tree in downtown Troy. I think the date is November the 9th, tentative. So there'll be some really cool things that go along with that, but ornament making, ornaments that'll get put on that tree when it gets put up, but that's super cool. Obviously, the tree is not coming from the Uwharrie National Forest. However, because we have a national forest is one of the reasons that tree is making its way through our county. So I just think that's really interesting and exciting that we'll some way get to touch that before it heads on to Washington. So more will come out about it, but it is happening in November, and I do believe it's November 9th. Don't quote me on it. But I find that cool. Anything else? Well, I do need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Commissioner Hassel with the motion. I need a second.
Okay.
Commissioner Little with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?